Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of July 13th. I'm still Michael James. I'm still in the 49th Ward. And I'm really always honored to bring on my friend, my state representative from the 14th District here in Illinois, the one and only Kelly Cassidy, who continues to be living the dream, whether it's here in Chicago, down in Springfield, or somewhere in Wyoming. Hello there, Kelly. How are you today?
I'm really good. It's so good to see you, Michael.
It's good to see you again. So I
didn't make it over to the porch this weekend, unfortunately. I barely made it out of the house.
Well, it's always good when you can stay home. And I got to say that the rain came. But now let's talk about politics. And the reason I initially asked you to come on again, Kelly, was because there's a lot of blowback around LGBTQ plus issues in this country. I did some writing recently, and I remember saying, we got gay marriage, but there's a hell of a blowback. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of civil rights, but there's been blowback ever since on that by the right. Mm-hmm. What's your take on the situation that around the country, here in Illinois, wherever, on LGBTQ plus issues and how it relates to electing our next public officials?
Absolutely. Well, I will say, in the state of Illinois and specifically in the city of Chicago, there has been a lot of intentionality about ensuring that there are protections in place for our rights. The Chicago City Council is now the queerest in the country, which is kind of amazing. As I sit down in Springfield as the only member in the House with one other gay member in the Senate. So it would be nice to have as much community as they have down in the State House. But we've really, on the state level, done a lot to make sure that protections are in place. And you're right, the blowback is very real. We're seeing incredible attacks all over the country. Something north of 500 anti-gay, anti-trans bills have been introduced in state houses around the country this session alone. And some of those get introduced here, but when you have a super duper majority like we do, they never see the light of day. But they still do harm, because I regularly get emails from folks, even folks here in the 49th Ward, who tend to have a pretty keen awareness of what's going on. They'll see a bill like that get introduced and reach out, and in some cases really panicking, especially if it relates specifically to them. A lot of these anti-trans bills, there is that immediate hit to your psyche. And so even in a state like ours, harm is done when people introduce these bills. But we have a really solid shield here. People who come to Illinois seeking gender affirming care are protected just like people who come here seeking abortion care. So I feel really good about what we've done here in the state and in the city. But, there remain issues. We had a little controversy bubble up around the Pride Parade and the lengths and who got to march and who didn't, things like that. So even in a place with a pretty solidly pro-gay record, there can be hiccups.
Well, it certainly has exploded on the political scene, not only gays, but trans stuff. I mean, I'm thinking
trans stuff especially, that really is that is the target du jour, no question. That community is bearing the brunt of a lot of hate.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering how many trans people there are. I in thinking about it right now, I remember back in my high school, there was only one person that we were aware of that was probably gay, and we weren't the nicest to him, but we were also nice to him too. And but I don't even remember trans people. Now, I remember the first time I met a trans guy, he was interviewing me, or a trans person, had a beard, and he had been a woman. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of has blown me away, and I'm still working on it. I have a couple of kids who are gay, and they're all big part of the family. I'm just wondering your take on: is there a new explosion? Is it something that always was there?
It's something that was always there. I mean, I will say, I feel really blessed. I've talked about the island I grew up on as, just this really amazing live and let live community. And as a kid, one of the folks that we all knew transitioned, and nobody gave a damn. It was just, okay, you're Brandy. And so I was really blessed to have had that experience as a kid. But I think that just as, let's look at the HIV/AIDS epidemic, let's look at the LGBT civil rights movement. Until people felt safe coming out, we didn't see it.
Right.
People used to say, I don't know anybody who's gay. And that was always a lie, because everybody knows somebody who's gay.
In their family.
Exactly. And so I think what we're seeing is, just sort of the evolution of coming out. Also, as we've worked on laws, we've made it easier to stay safe. You can get your documents updated. You can actually match your government issued ID, which is a massive safety issue for folks who, really take a chance every time they buy alcohol. At getting bashed.
I'm a little curious to know, where do you think the population is at? I think that a lot of people in the United States have certainly gotten used to gay marriage and have reconciled that there are lots of people who are gay. And as not everyone had a Black member of their family, but most families have a gay member of their family, whether they want to admit it or not.
Exactly.
Do you think that the population as a whole is a little needs more education about the trans issue or awareness of it? Because it sort of has hit heavy and quickly, and the reaction from the red states has been swift.
Yeah. Well, first of all, red states and Republicans in general do a really good job of identifying and fanning the flames of a particular targeted victim. Right. They know that this is a group that has existed in the shadows, that is just starting to come into their own. And so they know there's a vulnerability there, and they're going to exploit it. And that's what we're seeing. And I will say, from for years now, I've kind of been amazed at the concentration of trans population in the suburbs and how broadly spread out trans folks are, which has not always been the case with the LGBT community. Specifically, right? Like we have, we think of the lesbian neighborhood, we think of Boys Town. Trans folks live everywhere. There's really not a concentration that you could speak to. Access to a city for care is probably important for some. But I've always really been blown away by just how diffuse that community can really be.
One of the phenomena that we are living with across the country is book banning. And I remember growing up in New England and hearing about witches and all that kind of stuff. And then, now we have book banning everywhere. I did see that there was a lawsuit challenging an anti-LGBTQ plus book ban in Georgia. And I don't know if you're aware of that. But that sounds like a good thing, that there are people everywhere fighting back. And
absolutely.
I may as well throw it in here now, too, that I did see that only 3 Republican women in South Carolina's Senate took on their party and stopped a total abortion ban from passing in their state last year. Guess what? In return, they all lost their jobs in the most recent election.
They did. They lost Republican primaries. Yeah. And we only have 20 minutes, so I don't know that I can really talk about gerrymandering and map making. But what we have done in this country with our maps has really it is at the core of the toxicity of our politics. It is at the core of the extremism in our politics. Most people in the General Assembly don't fear a general election. They mostly fear a primary. There are 118 of us, and there are probably 30 seats that are up for grabs at any given time. I know there's a count this year, but I can't remember.
Talking about the Illinois legislature.
Yeah. The vast majority of my colleagues are more concerned about a primary than a general. I, for example, this is a Democratic district beyond measure, right? It's probably one of the highest Democratic districts in the
49th Ward in the 14th Congressional District, or the State Rep District.
Exactly. But so, I've had general elections in the past. There's a relatively small handful of active Republicans here, and people have popped up. But by and large, there's just not that. I remember at one point, the House Republicans had vowed to run somebody in every district to keep us all busy. and they couldn't find anybody in my district to run. Now, in a city district like this, there's not any way for it to really be balanced, right? But there are other parts of the state and the city where we have drawn the districts in a very hyper-partisan way. And that's what brings us to this. Those women are heroes, by the way. They took their oath seriously.
Yeah.
I've only ever in my life, I once had a member in Illinois stand up and say, if the Reproductive Health Act vote sends me home, so be it. I will proudly take that vote. But that is exceedingly rare in politics. So those three women are absolute heroes.
Well, that's good to hear. And I don't know if you're in touch with those three women, but you might want to encourage them to work for the Democrats in South Carolina, which really needs some help. Well, is there anything else about LGBTQ plus issues in the country that you want to talk about a little bit that we haven't addressed?
Absolutely. I think that, whether we're talking about LGBTQ stuff or reproductive rights, the reality of our situation in Illinois is pretty stark. I can keep passing good laws in Illinois, but if we lose the White House, don't retake the House, lose the Senate, and we end up with a national ban, our laws will be invalidated. And I think people like that we have to shout that from the highest rooftops, because I think a lot of people think we're cool. We're Illinois. We got this blue wall around us and everything's great. And the reality is we are powerless against a federal ban. And so we have to vote like our lives depend on it, because they do.
At the outset of the show, I talked a little bit about the Supreme Court and their decision around federal agencies. And
oh my God, gutting. Absolutely gutting.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, that, also we certainly talked a little bit about immunity, but there's talk that the Supreme Court would actually, or might actually, if they had the opportunity, go and try to, ban gay marriage.
These crazy people, they're going to use Comstock to not just take away gay marriage. They will criminalize gay sex. They will criminalize birth control. They will criminalize possession of pornography. And pornography, as you recall, is anything that gives the judge a hard on. So it's a very broad definition. These folks are coming for us. They might as well be wearing Puritan costumes. This is our reality. If Comstock is the law of the land, we're screwed.
And Comstock is what again?
It is an I'm going to make up a year, or I'm not going to do it. 1800s law that's on the books that was written by a guy who was obsessed with birth control and female sexuality and controlling it. And it's written so broadly, it's about what you can send through the mail, but it becomes what can happen in commerce. So providing medication, providing birth control, selling a condom to a gay man, like any number of things could be criminalized under it. A steamy grocery store romance novel. If you look at some of the books that are getting banned, that would count.
Yeah, it's pretty much amazing. So, yeah. Given all that, and given the potential of an even more right-wing Supreme Court, the possibility of the return to the presidency of the orange-haired fascist dude, what is your take on the current state of the Democratic Party and the challenge that has been thrown to us by our president, who has performed in so many ways so much better than we ever expected? I do like him a lot. And it being a guy who's a little older than him, I am sympathetic to the age question, but I have not been convinced by, certainly by the debate or his Stephanopoulos interview or anything he said since. I'm wondering where you're at on that, if you can talk openly and honestly about it, because it's this week, it's what's happening.
I feel like we're losing our damn minds, Michael. The reality is he won the primary. We are way too close to the election to try to vet somebody. There are processes involved there. Nobody's talking about what the process for selecting a nominee is. Do we think that people are going to be more likely to vote for Kamala? Do we think people would vote for, like, I keep getting emails of like these fantasy tickets. And the reality is we need to get on the goddamn buses to Michigan and Wisconsin and knock doors and sell this ticket and sell the fact that this ticket is what's standing between us and fascism, period.
So
we're wasting precious time.
No, I can understand that. And I do think that, a lot of people talk
calling for a rope-a-dope.
We want to focus on the Trump and all the evils around the Trump. But, this other stuff is in our faces, too. And we see
what else is in our face, and it's not on the front page of the New York Times or the Washington Post, is how incoherent Trump was, too.
That's true.
Babbles and spews nonsense on the daily. And we're worried about 2 hours that nobody really watches and doesn't change anybody's vote. Look, he wasn't my first choice. No question. Did I think he was going to do one term? I did. Nobody ran against him credibly in the primary. We are where we are. Get on the goddamn bus and let's win this thing or we're all going to die. It's ridiculous. And I understand why people feel this way. I do. The time for that was the primaries.
I'm just wondering, given I hear what you're saying, I'm just wondering if you had a crystal ball and you were pretending that you could see the future, what do you think will happen? Do you think people will suck it up and will go with our guy? Or do you think this is going to grow? Because it's no longer just the media. It's like within the Senate. It's within the House. It's I
go back to why aren't we talking about what Trump said and what he says on the daily? Why aren't we talking about the immunity question? Like all of this is keeping what they did to the court off the front page of the paper because we're all in this circular firing squad. Look, maybe he should step down. Like, I'm not hearing an articulated plan for what that would look like that wouldn't be even more disastrous than what we're dealing with now.
Well, there's talk about there would be a mini nominating process, or it would have to be him deciding to step down.
Well, no matter what, he has to step. It's up to him. Right?
Yes,
he's the nominee. There's no process to pull that away from him. So, A of all that. B of all, what is a mini primary process? Are we talking about getting a special election in all 50 states? Like, these are the questions that nobody seems to be able to answer when they go down. Like, this is a thought that it hasn't fully been vetted or thought through. Do we have an open convention? That sounds like a recipe for, great clips for Republican ads for the rest of the year. I think the chaos is the point, and they're loving it.
Yeah, they are. But one thing about a little nominating process that I heard would take the Republicans out of the news and would focus on the Democrats and what was going on. I don't want to get too heavy on taking sides on this. I'm pretty open to both positions.
I am pretty much too. Like, in theory, I'm open to both concepts. It sounds like the idea of him of a replacement might not be practicable.
No, and it gets complicated too because Kamala Harris, I think she's always been underestimated. In the last few weeks, I've gotten to like her more and more. But there is, if they had a different ticket without her, you can't lose the Black women vote. They are key to what's going to happen no matter who is the candidate. And so that's a pretty serious issue. About who would
and would the electorate we're concerned about turn out for a Black woman? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
who are we aiming for with this? And
well,
the left doesn't love her either. She's a prosecutor.
Yeah, she is. I just want to say that
it gets more complicated the more you talk about it.
Yes. I just want to throw in a little pitch here that a guy I do like for the future, and I see him at the top of a list because his name begins with a B, is the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. And he's just something that I have a feel, it's just been with me for now about a year. that he's someone to watch.
Interesting. I'll pay a little more attention.
Well, speaking of watching, I've been at a couple of memorial events for progressives who've passed on. Slim Coleman, Lou Kreinberg, and a number of times there's Congress people at these events. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten to talk to a few people. I've seen Bobby Rush. I've seen Chuy Garcia. I've seen Jesse Jackson. I've seen Danny Davis. Mm-hmm. These guys, except for Chuy, they're all really old. And Jan Chakowski is probably not as old as me, but she's getting up there too. And I'm just wondering, what's your sense of the future? And I guess we would call it a changing of the guard, because these are all progressive people who've done a lot of good stuff. We've been really fortunate. But after this next election, I don't know how many of them will be around. What's your take on that and the process and how you think it might shake out?
Well, aging happens to all of us, right? So, and you're right. You and when you put it in that way, our congressional delegation skews older. And I think we are right to wonder, is the bench ready? Have we done enough to build the bench? One could argue you never could do enough to build the bench. And that tends to be my approach. I think that, we should be making sure that we're, looking at every possible race as an opportunity to develop leadership and put more people in the pipeline. But folks make their decisions, just like, President Biden made their decision to run again. Jan and I have been partners in this since, she was in the Illinois State House. And it's been an amazing ride watching her, achieve the level of leadership she has and the national respect she commands. So it will be interesting to see play out. We've seen some challenges. I mean, Danny Davis, had a couple of tight scrapes there. Bobby Rush is no longer serving.
Well, he's still in Congress, isn't he? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rush is, yeah. When did he stop being in?
He's gone. I want to say he retired. I saw him recently and I made the same mistake and he pointed out that he wasn't there anymore, but I can't remember exactly when.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to check that out, and we'll check it out right after this show.
Fact check, Hal. Fact check.
One person we didn't mention is Quigley, who is a younger fellow, and he also is someone who has come out and asking Biden to step down.
He did, yeah.
Any comment on him?
I haven't talked to him yet. He and I kind of came up together in politics. He was working for Alderman Bernie Hansen when I was working for Senator John Collerton. We have sort of a sibling kind of relationship. So I actually spent the holiday weekend going, do I want to call him and talk to him about this? I'm going to wait till Monday. So I haven't talked to him about what brought him to this point. It was interesting in an interview I read today. He seemed it was a little bit more like where we are, a little bit, where he's like, it is Joe's decision and I'm with Joe regardless, that kind of stuff. So he did at least add that, whether that was in his original statement or not.
And I want to stand corrected that Bobby Rush did retire. And so I was really off base on that. And I hope I will be forgiven by my listening audience and you and everyone else.
Well, like I said, when I saw him a few months ago, I did the same thing. So.
No, I've seen him twice at memorials and talked to him briefly, and I just didn't realize that. We got 2 minutes to go here, and I'm wondering what you, Kelly Cassidy of the 14th District here in Illinois, what would you like to share with our multitude of listeners and viewers?
I would like to invite everybody within earshot to join me and the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward and lots of other both IPO and party organizations around the city in participating in Operation Swing State, where we will be organizing canvassing shifts in Michigan and Wisconsin Everything will be handled for everyone. We'll either organize carpools or rent vans or buses. People will be going every weekend between now and the election. And you just have to email me at ward49cassidy@gmail.com, and I will get you hooked up with Operation Swing State.
That's good. And connected to that, I don't know if it's the same, but I know Katie Hogan
Yep.
is sometimes on the show, as she is a producer and sometimes a host and often a guest these days. She has a new job, which is helping to get people to Wisconsin and Michigan to help.
That is the same. It will come as no surprise to you that Katie and I are doing stuff together again every election cycle.
Well, you're two of my favorite women, and I know you both do great work in the world. And I want to thank you, Kelly Cassidy, for coming on. I want to thank you for correcting me about Congressman Rush and his current status, and for talking a little bit about the LGBTQ plus community and the attacks from red states on people's rights in America. So until I see you on the street or in the neighborhood or at the next event, thanks you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for all you do, Michael.